The creator of Deadpool confirms the failure of Warner's DC Comics, which is honestly humiliating considering you're talking about downsizing of staff again, shared offices going into effect, and so much more. Companies like Warner and Disney with Marvel, they brought this on themselves too, with their creators telling people that it was a privilege to interact with them, not a God-given right. And yet they wonder why manga is beating the socks off of them and they end up in shared workspaces. Yeah, the state of not only comic industry, but DC Comics and Warner itself, oh, this stuff is bad. So hey there to all you fine folks on this fine day, by the way. I hope you are doing excellently. And just to know, we had our own comic book come out a couple of days ago. Link is in the description. This is our alternative to this. They want to denigrate you. They don't want you to be there. Well, we do want you. More on that at the end of the video. Check that out. Thank you. Now, like I was saying at the beginning, the creator of Deadpool himself, Rob Liefeld, is going to confirm what we're talking about here with him saying, can confirm this is absolutely true from my SoCal DC buddies. Quote, shared workspaces, hot desk model in full effect, reduced office force work staff again. Now, the link that he is showing is to an article from bleedingcool.com. I would not go to that website, by the way. I mean, you'll have about 1 million pop-ups. You may get a virus from it too, so you're warned. But this is the title. DC Comics moving offices yet again to a hot desk model. Now, I don't want to go over the entirety of this article, but I do want to go over some of it because it shows you just how bad things have gotten, really for DC Comics, the comic industry at large, and for Warner Brothers as well. Listen to this here. A couple of weeks ago, I got word that over the past few weeks, DC Comics staff who had still been working from home hadn't been allowed into the Burbank headquarters building to retrieve their belongings, which they couldn't get at during the lockdown. So, they weren't even allowed into the headquarters of Warner Brothers. I mean, that should say something about your status. Continuing, that they had been told that Warner was going to use this space for something else, and that DC Comics would no longer have access to these 3 floors of prime Warner Brothers real estate. So, they were unceremoniously kicked out of the floors that they had been using for so long. And everyone was moving again. So this isn't the first time they've moved. They were moving again to offices close by. And you gotta love the spin here before people literally lose their jobs. It seems that DC staffers working from home, or in one case, Hawaii, had done such a good job during the beer bug that physical proximity in the primest of primus state was suddenly seen as an excess cost by Warner. So they're saying you did such a good job. We're going to fire some of you. We're going to move you into shared offices. Yeah, that's a great excuse there, isn't it? Now, Warner, they apparently tried to hide this move at first. I wonder if they forced their staffers to sign non-disclosure agreements not to talk about it, so journalists, they couldn't follow up and find out what was going on. Then a report posted to a private WhatsApp group actually gave everything away because it showed one DC Comics staffer moving all of their stuff from a cubicle to a new DC building and confirming that they would now be working in a hot desk model in a new building. And that is beyond insulting when you think about what a hot desk model is. See, before this move, DC Comics didn't just have offices. They had 3 floors of offices. You know, they had their own prime real estate because they made money and they prided themselves on their office space. They always talked about how those offices, they reflected their individual personalities as employees. So, you know, they had their own area and creative freedom. You had some of them, for example, that would have rubber band balls. That's exactly what they kept everywhere. Other ones that kept potted plants, neon signs, and so on. Now, the hot desk model, it eliminates individuality and really it creates this soul-crushing environment where you don't have anything of your own. Quote, also known as a shared workspace that indicates an office working environment in which people are not all in the office at the same time. You can see how they're going to excuse this here. So desks are not attributed to any one person. Any employee can sit down and use a desk as if it were their own, so you can have fewer desks than staff, which cuts cost in terms of office space and technology needs, but it also creates quite a soulless working environment devoid of personal quirk. Now really think about that message and just how insulting that can be. I mean, before, like I said, you had 3 floors of individual offices, so everybody actually had their own space. And again, it wasn't just space, it was prime real estate. It was right there in the headquarters, so you felt that you were part of Warner Brothers, like they actually cared about you. Here they're telling you, well, you need to get out of that prime real estate. You need to go to something smaller, and like they said, in the new building, it will become first served for those who come into the building while the rest work at home. So some people, they're not even going to be invited. And if you are invited into the offices, yeah, you're going to have to fight over limited resources. You're going to have to wait and wait and wait. And like they say here, most DC Comics staffers will no longer have a permanent place at work, and no one, you notice that there, no one can have their personal items in their offices. Again, they're going to create this area that is devoid of personality, just like the comic books that most of these people are creating. Now, all of this goes back to something I've been talking about for quite some time, and that is the health or the lack thereof within the Western comic book industry. See, we always hear about how the Western comic book industry, it's doing fine. In fact, the sales, they are better than ever. Well, you know why that is. That's because they will take their numbers and they'll combine them with manga numbers. And I mean, really, why wouldn't they want to do that? I mean, if you look right here at the top 20 adult graphic novels for February 2022, what do you see? You see no titles that include things like X-Men, things like Batman. You don't have anything whatsoever represented that talks about Western media. In fact, if you looked at the publishers here, what you'll notice overwhelmingly is Viz Media. 19 out of 20 spots, they belong to Viz Media. And the other spot, well, you'll notice that's not the Western comic book industry. Don't feel bad for Western comics either, because they 110% brought this on themselves. Not just with shoddy products, but with a mentality. Again, it's a privilege to interact with them, not a God-given right. Yeah, it's a privilege to interact with your wallet. That's why, at the end of the day, we create our own comic books, because we can either complain incessantly about these issues until it drives us away from the mediums that we love and enjoy, or we can create alternatives that continue to provide escapism, they continue to provide fun, and more importantly, they come from people that actually respect you as a customer instead of denigrating you and trying to drive you away. I hope you'll check that out. Link is in the description. We definitely need your help. Unlike those companies, we know that too. Thank you. I appreciate you. Going to end here. Thank you again for being on the channel too, and we will see you soon.